Hello, English 102 online students. Professor Berninger here. I want to talk to you about the William Carlos Williams poems. First off, excellent job on the discussion boards. I asked you to be ridiculous, and you were. And you were ridiculous in responding to each other. And here's why I wanted you to do that. Number one, I'm not trying to turn you into English professors and literary critics, although if that happens, hey, don't blame me. I want you to respond to the poems as human beings, and I want you to respond to all of the poems in a fresh way of thinking, right? The thinking and feeling that a poem asks of you is very different than, say, a math problem, or getting your car repaired, or figuring out how to pay your auto insurance. There's a certain logical set of steps to find a solution to the problem, right? Uploading your papers as a Microsoft Word document through Blackboard, which is how you need to be submitting all of your essays and written work besides discussion boards. You want to sort of figure that out in a clear and logical way and be successful. Poems are not asking you to do that. Poems are asking you to find a way in, think, feel, be a little ridiculous, be a little out of the box. Get rid of the box. Come on, we don't need any boxes when we're talking poetry. So excellent job, and believe it or not, I think you all came up with really good ideas about the poem, really good thinking about the poem, because we found another way in rather than being sort of super serious about it. So I did come out in my backyard today to hang out with my family Wheelbarrow. This Wheelbarrow has been in the Berninger family for at least 52 years, right? Because I remember it as a kid. My dad remembers it as a kid. So this Wheelbarrow, I think, goes back to the 1920s at least. I did replace the wood, but the important part is holding up really well. And a lot depends upon a red wheelbarrow, right? But let's talk about this is just to say before we get too far into the red wheelbarrow. This is just to say, now, when someone says, well, all I'm saying is, usually they're not. Usually they're saying a whole lot more than that. We're almost always saying more than we think we are, and maybe more than we intend to. So I love to start the semester with this poem, because all poetry, literature, and even all people, we always communicate more than maybe we intend to. This is just to say, I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox. Okay, an icebox is an old refrigerator that you actually put a huge block of ice in. This is before electricity. Now, if all this person wanted to do was apologize, the person would have written, I ate the plums that were in the icebox, very sorry. But no, the person who left the note, which several of you said could have been your brother, although your brothers didn't leave a note, terrible. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, which you were probably saving for breakfast. So I ate them, even knowing you were saving them for breakfast. Forgive me. Several of you noted that you didn't think that forgive me was particularly sincere, sarcastic, and I sort of hear you on that. Again, if all the person wanted to do was to apologize, the person would have written, and we're imagining this, right? We're imagining this as a note left by one person who got up earlier and had breakfast before the other person. It's very easy to imagine this as a husband and wife and husband, husband, wife, people who live together, right? Probably not roommates, because there's a lot of tension here, and hopefully roommates don't fight like this. Forgive me. They were delicious. So not only did I know you were saving them, they tasted really good. So sweet. So cold. Now the word choice here is extraordinary. Ending with so cold. That just gives me a chill. I've read this poem, I don't know, 400 times. And whenever I get to the end of that, I always go, wow. So cold. This is a cold note. Eating those plums was a cold act by that person. So there's a lot more. This poem is a great poem to start the semester with because it's probably a note. It's saying a lot more than "I'm sorry." Poems are almost always saying more than you think they are, and quite often we do as well. One of the reasons we study poetry and literature is to get our minds working differently than overly logical, like solving a math problem or getting our car fixed. Life takes creative, sometimes ridiculous approaches. So again, I asked you to be ridiculous about these really somewhat ridiculous poems, but they're serious. They are very well regarded literature. To get you just thinking differently, and you should think differently about everything. Always try a ridiculous solution in your head at least, and you'll find more interesting ways to go about problem solving. So, good poem to start the semester with. On the flip side, the red wheelbarrow, right? Maybe the rusty wheelbarrow. Maybe this poem is just to say, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Maybe all Williams is doing here is giving us an image, a picture, a painting. And I think he is. William Carlos Williams was besides being a poet, he was an OBGYN. He delivered something like 2,000 babies traveling around northern New Jersey, where he worked as an OBGYN, a doctor. But he wrote very often short poems. Some think it's because he did it on the back of his prescription pad. Most of you probably don't even know what a prescription pad is, but that's how doctors used to order medicine for you. Anyway, I digress. He also wrote poems about painting. So he was very interested in images. Some literary critics say he invented a whole style of poetry called imagism, which is just giving you an image. And I think that that's what this is. He's giving us an image, and I like it, right? So sometimes you need to let a poem just wash over you, right? You don't need to think about it logically. Just let it happen. Now, I could tell a couple of you in your responses were frustrated by both poems. Try not to be frustrated. Listen to me. I know your entire life, you've been told your entire life that you should be able to read something and understand it. That's good writing and that's good reading. You shouldn't have to read an article in a magazine twice to get it. You probably took standardized tests where you read 5 paragraphs and you had to answer 5 questions in 5 minutes, conditioning you to figure out what an author was writing quickly. Poems don't work like that. Poems don't work like that, okay? Poems you should read, muse on them, think a little bit, but if your goal is to get some meaning out of it, like you're reading a history textbook, you're only going to be frustrated and angry. So try to set that aside. I do feel your pain, okay? Poetry scared me for a long time. I avoided poetry classes in college, which means I took classes that had like 8 novels. I took an English class that had 11 novels one semester. 11 novels. About 400 pages each. 4,000 pages of novels. And I read every word of every one of them. Why didn't I just take a poetry class? Anyway. So I feel your pain and I understand frustration when you read a poem, because you're like, you want to get it, right? You want to get it. Well, sometimes it can be a very different thing than someone else's it. Sometimes there's nothing to get. You just sort of have to experience it. Again, think of looking at a painting. Think of listening to music without words, where you just listen to it, right? And it happens. You don't really try to figure it out. So when reading poetry, and I really want you to try this, those of you who don't like poetry, which I understand why you might not, just read the poem and see what pops into your head and your heart. Just go with how it makes you feel. Find a side door into the poem, something that you thought was interesting, and read that line over. Put the poem down, do something else. Come back to the poem, okay? Have a personal response. Think of your family wheelbarrow. But please don't let the poems frustrate you. If they do, stop, set that aside, and read the poem again and just see what happens to you. How do you feel when you read the poem? Also, it doesn't really fit with these poems too much, but also make sure you always understand every word in a poem. There aren't that many words here, people, in a poem. Look them up if you don't understand them. Okay, you gotta know the words. All right, so if I was held hostage as an English professor, if someone took me hostage and forced me to interpret this poem, here's what I would say. And I got this from somewhere else. I just want to get out of the hostage situation. I do not believe this interpretation to be even anywhere accurate. However, I will give it to my hostage takers so I can get released. I'm making this up, okay? The red wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow. Okay, a wheelbarrow is technology. It's man-made. It's an invention. It is man-made. Glazed with rainwater. Rain is nature, right? Rain comes from the heavens. It comes from nature. It is not man-made. Beside the white chickens. A white chicken is not nature. A white chicken is not man-made. A white chicken is humans taking wild chickens, which do exist. Long ago, we did this as people, long ago, thousands of years ago. Taking wild chickens, breeding them in a particular way to produce boring white chickens that lay eggs for us to eat, or we kill the chicken and eat it. So much depends upon the interaction of nature, pure nature, rain, pure man-made, a wheelbarrow, and something in between. The chicken, the white chicken. That's a crazy interpretation of this poem. Makes good sense, but it's a little crazy, okay? So, to summarize, because I try to keep these videos under 15 minutes each for you. Excellent job on the discussion boards. You guys were ridiculous. However, your ridiculousness was a way of thinking, a way of getting at really what I think these poems are about. Especially this is just to say. Talking about your brother. Perfect. Perfect, okay? Good job. Keep up the work on the discussion boards. Have fun with them. Be creative. Be supportive. Disagree politely. You guys are off to a great start. I think this class is going well. I hope you are. If there's some way I can improve, if there's something you want more of, less of, shoot me an email. berninger@sunycgcc.edu, but hey, you already knew that. So keep up the good work out there, people, and I will see you on the internet.